Hello, I'm Mia Pearlman, Managing Director of Affinity and Vice President of the LPA. I'm joined here today with Christopher Clover, who is also our Honorary President and founding member of LPA. Chris has 55 years in the industry. He is the Managing Director and CEO of Panorama. On top of that, he's won the Businessman of the Year award with CIT. Chris, you might have to explain that a little bit further to us.
It's the Centro de Iniciativos Turísticos in Marbella, which is comprised of almost 500 professionals and businessmen living in Marbella and active in the Marbella area. And it's a real honor to receive a prize such as that and to be here and working in such a wonderful business
environment
and profession as ours of being a real estate agent.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a very prestigious award, but you are the grandfather, the god of real estate really here, aren't you? You've been going longer than anybody else. So Panorama started in which year?
Well, we opened our first office here in 1970, which is, we're on our 56th year. My family is a family of estate agents. My father was an estate agent in Charlottesville, Virginia, which is where I was born and brought up. My grandfather was an estate agency and one of the first golf course developers in Chicago. He opened his first real estate agency office in 1904. So, and then when he retired in 1952, he moved from Chicago to Charlottesville, which is where my parents had moved. My dad was a Black Angus cattle farmer, the president of the Black Angus Association of Virginia, and he was also the tennis pro on the athletic department of the University of Virginia for many years as a second income. And then when my grandfather retired, my grandfather said, "Bill, why don't we open a real estate office agency together?" So my dad opened his agency with his father in 1952. And he became very successful in selling beautiful estates and homes in the Charlottesville area and built a small team. And based on that success, in 1967, he bought an international real estate agency based in Washington in 1967, which was specialized in selling homes in different countries abroad. It was called Panorama International Limited, was the name of the company. He had virtually an immediate success and built that up over the next 2 or 3 years. And he started inspection flights of properties to different areas, but specifically Mallorca and Marbella.
And had he been here before he started the inspection flights? Had he visited Marbella?
Oh, of course.
So he knew.
But he didn't. He never lived here. He didn't open the office personally.
No.
He had his own real estate agency in Charlottesville. Yeah. He still had to run.
Yeah.
And he hired people to run with his personal involvement.
So back
the
then,
agency in Washington. It's amazing. We sold in the early 70s, late 60s, before we opened our office. In the early 70s, I think we sold over 200 properties for Nueva Andalucia.
Wow.
And we were specialists at the time in Bahia Dorada and Bahia de Casares and Estepona. And we were selling also Marbella del Este, which is the studio hotel next to the Don Carlos Hotel, which was then the Hilton.
Yeah.
So we had a wonderful start in bringing over plane loads of clients.
Yeah.
And on the basis of that, we set up an office in the Ricardo Soriano Numero Uno, the Edificio Capitol.
Great address.
In 1970.
So
basically to receive the clients that we were sent from the United States, and then eventually to become a local real estate agency. We were the first international agency in Marbella and the first agency to bring inspection flights from another country.
And I guess there was no Porta Banús back then.
There was.
There was?
In 1970, absolutely.
Just
1970 is the
beginning.
year of opening of Banús,
right.
if I remember correctly.
You went to
And
the
I actually, it's amazing. I met Jose Banús, who wanted to meet me because we were selling so well for him. And I met all of those famous people in those years.
Yeah.
Myself, I graduated from high school in '65, the lovely school, a boarding school called St. Andrews in Middletown, Delaware, where I'm very grateful for the education I got, the self-discipline that I was taught. And then I got my first real estate license in that year, 1965, working with my dad's office. This was before he bought
the office here.
The company Panorama. So I started showing properties when I was 18, and I got my license as an agent, not as a broker. There are two levels in the United States. And then I took my third year abroad in the university. I went to the University of Virginia, which is also in Charlottesville. This is right in the middle of Virginia, 2 hours drive from Washington, where my dad's other office was from '67 on.
And at what point did you decide to move to Marbella? When you were studying in Charlottesville, in Virginia, at what point did you think, I think I want to try and see what Marbella's like?
I got my first real estate license when I graduated from my boarding school. Then I started my first year in the University of Virginia, which is in Charlottesville. Then I was very lucky to be invited to work in the summer months as an apprentice in France.
Okay.
And I was asked back for a second summer. So I decided to take my third university year abroad in France, where I met my first wife, Kirsten, who's still best friend, mother of my children, Alex and Katinga. I married Kirsten in 1969. There was a great risk I'd be drafted to go to Vietnam. So I got a job teaching French for a couple of years.
Wow.
Rather than joining my dad's business, which I was really prepared and interested in doing, because it legally kept me out of the war in Vietnam for a couple of years. Then a lottery system came up.
Right.
And I went to work for my father's company in 1971, the year after he opened the office here in Marbella.
Right. So you went from France to Spain.
I went from France back to the university to finish my fourth year.
Right. And then
graduate and marry.
Yeah.
And then went to school, teaching school, a private school, teaching French for a couple of years. Then a lottery system came up, which allowed me to safely go and work for my father, no longer needing this legal deferment from military service.
So what did you think when you first arrived off the plane?
Well, this was amazing. I worked for 2 years in my dad's office and came over twice during that time with our inspection flights. The first time I came here, I remember so clearly the man in charge of our office, who we're still in touch with, wonderful guy. He had the Sotheby's office for Aspen, Colorado for many years. He collected me at the airport, and we went straight to the terrace of the Marbella Club, the patio of the Marbella Club, where the summer bar is. And I'll never forget the impression of the South American music and the singing and the elegance of the Marbella Club, which remains today my favorite place.
100%. I agree with you completely.
Just incredible.
Yeah, it's glamour personified. Yeah, it really is.
So I arrived in '73 for a year just to see what happens. The man in charge of our office, his name was Van Hoek, needed a relief, and he went back. And we had 5 salespeople at the time. And my project was to continue building it also as a local agency. And unfortunately, at the end of 73, there was a recession starting in the United States. The mother company stayed operative until the end of 74, the beginning of 75, in which case they closed. And we made a decision that we were already doing very good inroads into the market here. And my first wife, Kirsten, and I decided we'd stay. So that's really
the love affair
where
began.
where we started.
Yeah.
The real question, I think, is what was it about Marbella that made us come here in the first instance? Well, it was already an active focal point of our company, but we focused more on Marbella because my dad had, during a couple of years, a very nice guy. His name was René Frank, who knew Marbella well. And he said, listen, concentrate your efforts on Marbella because this is going to be the major quality resort destination of all of Europe. Well, it took us a long time.
A little bit longer than he expected, but
We've always been a very special place. But Marbella was tremendously successful in those early years, which is why we made the decision. When Alfonso Hohenlohe, Prince Alfonso, was invited by his uncle, Ricardo Soriano, to visit with his father, they actually were waiting for the uncle to come, and they had a picnic in the Finca Santa Margarita, which is where the Marbella Club is today, and they bought it the next year. The population of Marbella at the time was 10,000 people, registered residents. After he founded the Marbella Club and opened the Marbella Club Hotel in 1954, the population by the end of the 50s was 12,000. But from 1960 to 1970, it boomed to 29,000. So you can see the amount of growth, the amount of attraction. We had all the big names in cinema, in
film,
in politics, in royalty. Everyone. Marbella was
the place.
And remains, in an evolutionary manner, remains quality in the sense that it attracts some of the most interesting people of the world here.
Absolutely.
We didn't know it was going to take so long to be named last year best destination of Europe.
But deservedly so, and all good things come to those who wait. So in your time, in the 55 years you've been running Panorama, tell us the highlights. Tell us some of the pinnacle moments within that time frame, that timeline. Can you choose one or two? Is it?
I don't know. There
are
many. And I'm so grateful because I've had such an exciting life. I can't imagine a profession where I meet so many interesting people from around the world, and some of them you become close friends with. I mean, I'm still in touch with friends that I met in the 70s, no?
Yeah.
And 80s and 90s and even recently.
Yeah.
We made some wonderful new German friends last year who bought a property from us, which goes far beyond professional service. But the exciting part of our business, we not only share our experience, but we exercise our profession on the highest possible level. I've been just so lucky for the people that we've met to be able to have led and still lead a contributive life. And we had a lot of luck. I'll never forget the travel agency in England, Palmer & Parker was the name of them, sent us a developer by the name of Raphael Sea. And they said, you should see this agency here. Maybe they can help you. Well, Raphael was the spokesman and the managing director of a consortium which owned Las Lomas del Marbella Club, the development of plots And Raphael was also a pioneer developer. He was the guy who built Skull. He was the guy who built the Marbella house. He was the guy who built Las Terrazas de las Lomas de Marbella Club. Famous guy, you know? And his daughter and son-in-law. His son-in-law is a very well-known lawyer by the name of Carlos Bustillo. But Raphael gave me the sole agency for Las Lomas, which was just amazing, you know? There were maybe 3 or 4 agencies in Marbella, but they'd been here forever, and why wouldn't they choose me? Well, I don't know. Maybe he liked me, or maybe he thought I was competent, even though I was young. But we sold most of the plots in Las Lomas del Marbella Club. And in that same year, my wife and I sold a property that we had bought in Valle Dorada and Estepona, which was a major development for us, where we were selling a lot. And we bought a property in Puerto Banús, and we moved into it. And I rented an apartment next to ours in Puerto Banús to a very nice guy who I met in the office. And then he came back to me a month later and he said, "Chris, would you do me a favor?" And I said, "Well, if whatever I can do is in my power, this is not an obligation, it's a pleasure." And I really feel that, because we're in a service business, which is so important to leading a happy life and a productive life, and giving to others rather than just thinking of yourself and money, you know? At any rate, he said, "I'd like you to meet my brother because he needs help in managing his property." So I said, "Sure." So I met his brother, and his brother was David Shamoun, who we sold a lot of properties to over the years.
And for our viewers that maybe don't know that name or are not familiar with it, I mean, most everybody is in Marbella, but David Shamoun is the
eventually
original.
bought the Punta Romano and
Yes,
Marbella
Marbella
Club
Club.
hotels in
Yes.
1994 and 1995, respectively.
Which are the two Pinnacle hotels.
I was also a
on this
member
coast.
of his board of directors for several years after he bought Punta Romano. These 2 hotels are emblematic. They're unique. They're led today by David's son. David died about 13 years ago. I stuck with him, and we were very close for almost 35 years. The properties are now led by his children, Danielle Shamoun and Jenica Shamoun. Danielle looks after Puerto Romano, and Jenica looks after the Marbella Club, and we're still close to there.
Yeah.
But you asked about the highlights. So that's a real highlight, because he bought the house of Prince Alfonso's sister-in-law. Alfonso was married to an actress by the name of Jackie Lane, and Jackie's sister was Mara. And this is house where today you look at King Fahad's old house. They call it the White House.
The White House on the Golden Mile.
Which was reconstructed after he bought it. But this is the house I managed for David. And he sold it with some help from me to then Crown Prince Fahad.
Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia, exactly. And then I met, through those contacts, I met the Crown Prince himself when I delivered the property to him. And I met his brother, who's now the current king of Saudi Arabia, Prince Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud. That's when I took over also. I sold most of the properties to the Saudi royal family at the time. We managed for several years the properties of Prince Salman, who was then the governor of Riyadh and the vice minister of the interior of the country. And of course, as I said earlier, now king of the country. So these contacts led us to selling an enormous amount of properties in the late 70s to the royal family of Saudi Arabia, to other Saudis and other people of the Middle East. This is the opening of the Middle East market. And we were squarely right in the center of the involvement of the opening of that market during those years.
And there's
So
still
this was, let's say, a really major event which has affected me all of my life since then. And positively, and many of those people we met, we're still in touch with. And still looking after their children. You know? Other highlights, we made the most expensive sale in 1979, which was to David Shamoon, of a beachfront house called Los Delfines in the Marbella Club in Santa Margarita, which at the time was sold for $1 million.
Wow.
It's a beautiful property, and it's still the Shamoon family home in Marbella.
How wonderful.
And then in the 80s, our highlights, we were a very successful relationship with the original partners of Chesterton, which is a well-known, at the time, well-known English agency. Then in 1988, I did a wonderful deal with one of the most incredible people you could possibly find in our business. It was Diana Morales. She introduced the client to me to sell another beachfront home, which belonged to the Baroness Terry von Pans. It was one of the most important hostesses in Marbella. And we sold that at a record price at the time, which I believe was $9 million in 1988, to a man by the name of Mark Ridge, who at the time was a famous financier who died several years ago. That home is still owned by his children that we're also in contact with. But the exciting point was not just the fact that it was a record pricing sale, but it was the pleasure of doing business with Diana, who remains a very close friend. My current wife, Jovita, and I had lunch with her just last week.
Beautiful. Wow, what fascinating stories.
And then in the 90s...
What have you got for us?
At the end of the 90s, the beginning of we had a strong recession at the first years, but I think an event, which is a major event for all of us, is that in the mid-90s, we built up a minimum population, the population in the mid-90s, during the reign of Jesus Gil, leadership. We reached 100,000 registered residents, plus the floating population, which was enough to keep all of the activities going. And the hotels that wanted remaining opening without losing money during those winter months, which again, that started the winter season, which has now become almost like mid-season, all year round.
Yeah. Well, now we have our winter season is the golfing season, and then we have the summer season, which is the holiday season.
But it was always the potential that we saw in Marbella at the beginning, not only for our location, the southernmost tip of Marbella, but the beauty of the natural environment, the low volume construction that we have here, compared with other cities. In the early 60s, Torremolinos was a beautiful village, but look at what happened. It's high-rise, and it's not the quality area that, thanks to the leadership of those founding fathers in the 50s and 60s of Marbella, we are what we are today, and we've grown. But this critical mass of 100,000 people allowed us to take one step further towards our original destination of being a year-round resort city. Then at the turn of the century, my children, Alex and Katinka, joined Panorama, so they've been with us more or less 25 years. In 2015, I was given a Life Achievement Award, which I appreciate very much, for our contributions to the industry. I was also given an honorary prize, but it's actually effective. Being a fellow in the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors by the eminent route, where you don't have to take tests, but they invite you to join them to your contributions to the industry. Of course, there are 20 some odd categories. You will see the category of FRICs behind valuers, for example. That means fellow of RICS. It's an important sign of recognition, and also my daughter Katinka and Alfonso Munoz, who's my assistant sales director, also became members of RICS as well, taking the tests. But it's a factor which is not only an honor to be asked to join, also a matter of distinguishing the qualifications of our agency among our dear competitors.
Many competitors. I guess when you started, there were a handful of competitors. And 55 years later, there's a few more handful of competitors now. I think we're rolling at about 4,000 real estate agency companies on the coastline, 4,000. Then those companies have their individual teams. So, yeah, it's a big turnaround.
Did you say companies? I think you would be including a lot of freelancers there, would you?
Well, registered real estate agency companies, yes. So there could maybe be a company that's just one person as a company, and there could be somebody like you, where you have a team of 35 strong. But in total, we have 4,000 plus agents registered now.
Well, Mia, you've got to realize we are probably in one of the most competitive environments as far as property and real estate is concerned in the world.
Agree.
You have all of the major international chains. I can think of one that's not here. And even the newer ones, such as this French agency called Barnes, have said that they're about to open a shop here. Sotheby's, Christie's, Collier's, all of them, they're here because they want a part of this amazing market.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the demand has been incredible especially since the pandemic.
Yeah.
We've stepped up a whole level as far as our visibility in the market, and as you well know, the whole objective of the LPA is to elevate the standards of an uncontrolled, up until now, an uncontrolled,
unregulated market.
and many ways uncontrolled as well.
Controlled.
To raise the ethical standards and the professional standards of not only our members, but by example to everyone.
And with that in mind, if you were to give advice to the new agents coming into the market, where would you go with that? What would you advise them? How to start? To maintain their reputation?
There are a lot of people who enter into our business just for the money, because if you have people talent, it's easy to connect with people, show them a little bit the area without knowing much about the business, and then convince the client to work with you, and then your job is only finding the property, and keeping that relationship. This is fun. This is rewarding for the friendships, but it's not the true elements of a professional necessary for being a professional in the business. There's so much more in our business than just making friends and helping people find a home, in the sense that you have to, if a true professional, you have to know about valuing a property, to share your product knowledge with a buyer as to what is market value today. I know a wonderful agent in Nueva Andalucía. She's able to walk down the street and say, well, this house sold at that price, this house sold at that price. And it lends tremendous confidence to a client, because they're then orientated as to what real value is. I know another agent who says, well, what we do, we show them the most expensive, overpriced properties first, and then we show them what we want them to buy at the end. Well, I don't think that's.
No.
You want to let the buyer decide what he wants
You have
to
to
buy.
educate the buyer. You know the information, share it with your buyers. I say
So,
that all
so
the
you
time.
have to know your market values. You have to know your products upside down, inside out. You can't sell what you haven't seen. You have some agencies say, well, to find the client, I'll look at the property. Well, if you have the time, you can, of course, pre-inspect a property before a client comes, but maybe you don't have the time. But you have to know your properties. You have to know the advantages. You have to know the disadvantages. You also have an obligation to point out anything which is not obvious, which is a negative factor with a property, which might not be seen. This is an obligation in our business.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise, the owner could be sued for vicios ocultos, or hidden defects of a property. So then you have to
Yes, okay.
learn your ethical rules, how to collaborate with other agencies rather than squash them and stamp on them and win. No, it's not about that. In the whole world today, it's about collaboration, not confrontation. And we're all much stronger when we're able to collaborate together. There's nothing more exciting when you're representing a buyer and I'm representing a seller and we're working together and we're negotiating together. And then you have to have negotiating skills, don't you? Negotiating skills, they're absolutely critical to be able to bring a buyer together in harmony with the seller and do this softly and kindly using market forces, market elements of offer and counter offer, rather than over-representing one party or another, which can kill a deal.
Absolutely. Many things can kill a deal in this industry, but when you're a professional, that's the point of managing every part of that section. And
I think that,
those
really the
details
most
matter.
important thing, if you want to come into this business, if you're only going in it for the money, you're not going to be successful or happy
Yeah.
long time.
No,
That
the
doesn't bring
longevity is
happiness.
at risk. And that
When you reach a higher level of really having the professional knowledge and being able to have a contributive life by helping buyers, introducing them to the area, the different neighborhoods, knowing, sharing the history of the area, sharing market values and all of this, and helping them install here by introducing them to people that they might be interested in meeting, or restaurants or sporting facilities. It's all about very close to hospitality at the end of the day, rather than just exercising our profession, doing our job, and going and cashing in at the end of the day. And if you're not on that level, you will never be really satisfied professionally or give as much as you can back to our clients, our seller clients, our buyer clients, and to the community.
Wow, Chris, you are a wealth of knowledge. It's been fascinating hearing your answers, your highlights, your advice. It's absolutely imperative to this market when we're so saturated with agencies at the moment. So thank you so much. I have a last couple of questions, quick fire questions that we would like to ask you, just personal things to get to know you just a little bit better. What would be the one thing you would never compromise if you were buying a house?
One thing,
Yeah,
fireplace.
perfect. Fireplace.
Because to me, a fireplace is, the center focus when you're in your living room. And at my age, I'm beginning to work a little bit, a couple of hours in the morning from home if I don't have appointments. But to have a fireplace, even if there's no fire in it, to me is the center of the living room, and is somehow connected with positive emotion, heart, and warmth, and
good energy.
well-being.
Okay. And in your opinion, is there any underrated areas left of Marbella? Is there any little pockets that people haven't focused on yet?
There are. There's smaller communities, smaller urbanizations or areas. But it's interesting to see in the evolution of the market, first, the tremendous boom, and we're talking about since maybe the recovery from our last recession, which started in Marbella in 2012. We had the recession here from 2008 to 2012. To see areas which have been approached, bought, and then places remodeled and then sold, where investors had come in and end users. But yes, there are areas. There are some areas along the Ronda Road. There's obviously the area of this side of Estepona,